They call it the sleeping giant, a vast breathing caldera in the heart of America, hiding a power so immense it defies human comprehension. Yellowstone. We all know the stories, the doomsday scenarios, the scientific models of what could happen. An eruption that would plunge the world into a volcanic winter, altering life as we know it. For decades, it's been the stuff of documentaries and disaster movies, a threat looming in the distant future. But what if I told you the future is already here? What if I told you the giant didn't just stir in its sleep? It awoke. And what if I told you, we have the proof? Tonight, we're not talking about hypotheticals. We're not discussing computer simulations. We're going to show you something that has been kept from the public eye. Something that government agencies and geological surveys have classified, analyzed, and ultimately buried. We have obtained footage, eyewitness accounts, and internal documents that piece together a shocking event. A significant localized eruption within the Yellowstone caldera that happened, was contained, and was subsequently covered up. This isn't a theory. This is the story of the day Yellowstone erupted, and the handful of people who saw it happen and lived to tell the tale. To understand the magnitude of what you're about to see, let's quickly recap what we're dealing with. Yellowstone isn't just a volcano, it's a supervolcano. Beneath the stunning geysers and colorful hot springs lies a massive magma chamber, a reservoir of molten rock miles wide and deep. Scientists monitor it 24/7, tracking every tremor, every ground swell, every change in gas emission. The official narrative has always been that while the system is active, a major cataclysmic eruption isn't imminent. They talk about timescales of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years. They point to smaller hydrothermal explosions like the one that created Mary Bay as the most likely eruption scenarios in our lifetime. But what they don't talk about is the gray area. The event that's bigger than a geyser blowing its top, but smaller than the world-ending blast we all fear. An event big enough to cause chaos, to test emergency responses, and to scare the powers that be into total silence. Our story begins not with a bang, but with a whisper. A series of hushed conversations with former park rangers, disillusioned geologists, and local residents who were in the right place at the wrong time. Their stories all point to a specific 48-hour period a few years ago, a time when a remote, rarely visited section of the park was suddenly and completely sealed off. The official reason? A wildfire risk combined with aggressive bear activity. A convenient, plausible excuse. But the people on the ground knew something else was happening. They spoke of the ground shaking not like a typical earthquake, but rolling like ocean waves. They described a sound, not an explosion, but a deep, continuous roar that seemed to come from the very bedrock of the earth. And then, there was the sky. This is where the footage comes in. Smuggled out by an individual who has requested complete anonymity for their own safety, this is the first time it's being shown publicly. What you were looking at was filmed on a stabilized long-range lens from a ridge several miles away from the cordoned-off zone. Forget Old Faithful. This is something else entirely. You can see a massive plume of black ash and steam, not just venting, but being violently ejected thousands of feet into the air from a fissure that seemingly tore open the forest floor. The sheer volume and velocity are staggering. This isn't a hydrothermal event. The dark, gritty color of the plume indicates the presence of pulverized rock, magmatic material. This is, by definition, a phreatic or phreatomagmatic eruption. The giant was clearing its throat. We cross-referenced the date and timestamp on the footage with satellite imagery archives, and we found it. A thermal anomaly, a hotspot, in the exact location, so intense it was flagged by automated systems and then manually dismissed in later reports as sensor error. But it wasn't an error. It was the heat of a new volcanic vent bleeding out into the atmosphere. The smoke plume itself, while significant, was directed by unusual wind patterns into a sparsely populated area and dissipated relatively quickly, preventing widespread panic and observation. It was a perfect storm of concealment, a combination of remote location, favorable weather, and a swift information lockdown. Now, let's hear from someone who was there. We'll call him David, a retired first responder who was part of the initial containment team. His voice has been altered to protect his identity. We got the call, code red, a geological event. We had no idea what that meant. When we arrived at the staging area, it was chaos. Not civilian chaos, but organized federal chaos. FEMA, Homeland Security, USGS guys in hazmat suits. They told us a geothermal line had ruptured, a major one. But the vibrations we felt in the truck, the smell in the air, like sulfur and burnt earth, we knew that was a lie. We were tasked with search and rescue for a missing geological survey team. The two we found, they were in shock. They weren't burned, but they were covered in this fine gray powder, and they just kept repeating, "The ground opened up. The whole ground just opened up." We were debriefed and told what we saw was a classified natural gas explosion. We were forced to sign non-disclosure agreements so thick they looked like phone books. They told us talking about it would be a federal offense, a threat to national security. A threat to national security. Why? Because confirming an eruption, even a localized one, would shatter the fragile illusion of control. It would trigger economic panic. Imagine the stock market, insurance companies, the housing market in half a dozen states. It would cause a mass exodus, a panic that would be far more destructive than the eruption itself. So the decision was made. Deny, dismiss, and bury. Classify the data, silence the witnesses, and wait for the forest to grow back over the scar. The evidence of this scar is the final piece of our puzzle. Using the original footage to triangulate the location, we commissioned a private, high-resolution satellite flyover. And there it is. Even after a few years of regrowth, you can clearly see a zone where the vegetation is different. The pine trees are gone, replaced by opportunistic, hardy pioneer species. Soil analysis reports that we commissioned through a proxy source show abnormally high levels of sulfur, silica, and other volcanic minerals in that specific area, levels that are orders of magnitude higher than anywhere else in the park. The ground itself is warmer. The giant's breath is still seeping through. So what does this all mean? It means the timeline we've been sold is wrong. The Yellowstone supervolcano is not just a future threat. It is a present and active danger, capable of erupting in ways we haven't been told about. This event was a pressure release, a warning shot. The big question is, did that release of pressure calm the system down, or was it the first symptom of something much, much bigger building beneath the surface? The scientists who know the answer aren't talking, but the evidence we've shown you today speaks for itself. The sleeping giant is awake. It has proven it can act without warning, and that its keepers will choose silence over public safety. The real question is not if it will erupt again, but what will happen when the next event is too big to hide. The story doesn't end here. We are continuing to investigate, to find other witnesses, and to push for the release of the classified data. The truth has a right to be heard. Thank you for joining us on this journey into one of America's deepest secrets. If this story matters to you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our follow-up reports. Stay curious and stay safe.